We recently tested the Seagate FireCuda 530 and found it to easily be one of the best Gen 4 SSDs on the market. But at the time of our video, the Heatsink model wasn't quite yet available. This model is going to be really important in the market as it's one of the first drives announced to also be fully supported in the PlayStation 5. Its added heatsink has been designed by cooling solution experts EK Waterblocks to offer a huge cooling benefit versus a non-heatsink variant, which is becoming increasingly important as transfer speeds increase. So today we're going to finally have a look at that heatsink model. First up, a very quick recap of why this SSD is one that you should be considering for either your PC or your PlayStation. As well as installing and testing in a PS5, we're also going to be repeating the torture testing from our previous video to see how the new heatsink performs versus a built-on motherboard one. So the FireCuda 530 offers speeds of up to 7,000 megabytes per second read and 6,900 megabytes per second write. We tested the 2TB model and achieved real-world results of 6,900 megabytes per second read and 6,700 megabytes per second write in Crystal Diskmark. These are up there with the highest speeds we've seen, with the write speed taking a big lead over the competition that we tested. If you want to see the full details of that, then be sure to check out our full test video, which we've linked in the description for you. For PlayStation owners, this is way over and above the requirements from Sony, so you can be absolutely certain that you aren't going to have any issues. Seagate's drives are also the first we've seen that actually feature a compatible with PS5 sticker on the box, which is a nice peace of mind if you're unsure which drives are and aren't compatible. And it's super easy to install, as you can see here. This is one I did earlier. Even though the FireCuda is the fastest Gen 4 SSD that we've seen, there's actually another reason that it should be on your shortlist, and that's endurance. Seagate's SSDs are rated for generally double the endurance of their competitors, meaning that they're likely to last twice as long before they get to the end of their usable life. It should also mean that they'll maintain peak performance for a lot longer too. Basically, for a PC or PlayStation 5, it's unlikely that you'll come across a failure, even for the heaviest of users. And then even if you did, you've got a 5-year warranty and 3 years of data recovery via Seagate's rescue services. So, having covered all of that, the only remaining question is, how well does the heatsink perform? Unfortunately, we can't test it in a PS5 as there's no way of benchmarking on a PlayStation or monitoring the hardware, so instead we're going to use a 3XS system. So let's take a look at the results of our testing. If you're looking at an SSD for your PS5, then you need to buy the heatsink version as it's a requirement. Generally, the heatsink version is around £30 more than the model without, so it's not a huge increase. For PC buyers, you need to consider if your motherboard has a decent solution already. If it has, then you won't need the heatsink, but if it hasn't, then this is definitely recommended. The performance difference can be quite significant. Just like in our last video, we wanted to see just how effective the heatsink on the new FireCuda 530 really is. We've already tested without a heatsink and also with an ASUS motherboard heatsink in our test PC, so now we just need to perform the same test on this one. We would expect the built-in heatsink to perform similar or maybe even slightly worse than the built-on motherboard heatsink, as it doesn't have as much thermal mass. Our test consists of copying a massive 563GB file to the Seagate SSD, then as soon as it's finished, deleting the file and copying it over again. From our previous test, the FireCuda with no heatsink started throttling at around the halfway mark of the first copy. Then the one installed with the ASUS motherboard heatsink completed 3 full cycles without any throttling at all. That's over 1.6 terabytes of written data versus just 270GB without a heatsink. Let us know what you think of that difference in the comments. Now, the amazing news is that our much smaller EK heatsink on this new model also completed all 3 copies with absolutely no throttling at all. Just like on the motherboard heatsink, it's likely that it could have gone on for another, making copies of over 2 terabytes without active cooling. The difference truly is amazing. It's easy to see why Sony is specifying a cooling solution for the PS5. If we compare the ASUS motherboard heatsink and the EK on the Seagate SSD a little more closely, we can see that the larger ASUS one does just about win. Both SSDs started the test at 33 degrees, and by the end of the third copy, the ASUS heatsink one was at 63 degrees, whilst the EK heatsink finished at 66 degrees. That's 3 degrees more. We did, however, see some throttling from our Samsung SSD in our first test towards the end of the ASUS heatsink run, and this could have contributed to helping the temperature a little, maybe 1 or 2 degrees. So what's the conclusion of the test then? Well, given the much smaller size of the EK heatsink on the Seagate SSD versus the one on our ASUS motherboard, it came extremely close to the same performance, which shows that a huge amount of time and effort has gone into the design. Without doubt, if you have a motherboard without a heatsink, or if it's less substantial than our ASUS one, then it's 100% worth paying the extra for this EK heatsink version. The performance difference is significant. Basically, you're unlikely to ever see this SSD throttling. For PS5 owners, the heatsink version is the only option, but you can be confident that it's fully compatible, provides top-class performance and cooling, and also that it'll easily last more than the life of your console with its huge endurance rating. You can buy the Seagate FireCuda standard and heatsink models in sizes from 500GB right up to a massive 4TB right now from scan.co.uk.